Pretty itty bitty kitty unicorn. Pretty itty bitty kitty unicorn. There we go. Warming those vocal pipes up. Week 6, I hope you're all doing well. I saw an amazing movie over the weekend called Status Update. It's about a kid who moves from California to Connecticut, but he gets picked on by the hockey team. But he gets this app, and anything he punches into the app, he becomes, right? So all of a sudden he knows moves like Bruce Lee, he can sing, and then to get revenge on the bullies, he learns to play hockey, and then he gets the girl of his dreams, but then all of it goes to his head, and then he gets off the path, but then he breaks the app by accident, and then he's forced to be himself, and with that, he reunites with the girl of his dreams. So definitely check that out. It's called Status Update. It's an amazing movie. I think a good place for us to start is to talk about the next big essay that is going to be due on October 20th. It'll be a sociological comparative essay that pretty much, when I say primarily, I mean pretty much covers Harvest Gypsies, They Called Us Enemy, and a sprinkle of the videos, right? And while I included the final essay prompt or close to it, because there might be little minor tweaks in this week's module, I think I can help make it a bit clearer by talking it over. So all the assignments this week, you kind of want to keep that October 20th essay in mind, right? So pre-writing assignment this week, it's a short assignment that you want to do it after you've read, I don't know, about 100 pages of They Called Us Enemy. The assignment asks you to list 3 ways in which sociological issues, Japanese, American, and Oki experiences were similar, and 3 ways in which they were different, right? So for example, in both books, right, a major event fueled hardships for both groups, right? For one, right, for the Okis, it's the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression. For the other, it was Imperial Japan's bombing of Pearl Harbor, right? So there is a similarity in the form of a major event that fueled kind of both hardships. However, right, one difference is that the Japanese American hardship was rooted in racism, right, including at the federal level. Well, the Oki hardship was more rooted in classism, right, that kind of for financial and social class reasons, they were treated cruelly, right? So that's one example. If you like that example, you can use your own variation of that, right? That's something that I found interesting. Probably a lot of you found interesting as well, right? So you just want 3 of each, right? Those answers will be helpful when you go to write the final sociological comparative essay. Along with this is a short class conversation that asks you to post one thing and respond to one thing, right? So easy. And it's just asking you, what is some sociological aspect that you found interesting in Harvest Gypsies and why? The bigger assignment this week, and it's not that big, is a short personal response essay on Harvest Gypsies. So minimum 1 page, shoot for maximum of 2 pages, right? So somewhere in there, the primary goal, right, you kind of want to keep this concise if you can, the goal is to help you firm up and kind of organize your thoughts in regards to sociological issues in Harvest Gypsies, right? My hope is that you will be able to use some of these ideas from this personal response essay to help you write the more comprehensive sociological comparative essay that will be due on October 20th. So this essay kind of has a dual purpose. One is it's sort of a standalone exploration. And the second purpose of it is hopefully you'll be able to draw on it for the larger essay. So Since this is a personal response essay, please write it in the first person and use your personal voice. I created some suggested guidelines. You can follow them, you can not follow them. There's whatever you find interesting, right? So, potential sociological areas of exploration, right? Think about what really interests you. So, sociological, societal issues, right? I wrote, how were the Okies treated by the larger society that met them, right? And by met them, we kind of mean primarily in California and the Central Valley, right? How did the treatment, or even kind of the lack of treatment or lack of help by the larger society, harm the Okies, right? How were the Okies exploited by large businesses, a lot of times agricultural businesses? What role did the government, local and federal, play? And then what did the Okies do to respond or resist to issues of being exploited or issues of injustice, right? And that is something you will see in both texts is for Japanese Americans that were interned and for the Okies, right? There is some responses, right? How they kind of cope, how they resist, how they endure and sort of stand up and change things. So wrote personal reflection considerations. Again, this is for that little short essay just on Harvest Gypsies. Were you surprised by any of the stories, right? Did reading about the Okies alter or give you a better understanding of, or just change your perception of social justice? Since historical events are important, I might start with a quick overview of what historical events caused the Okie migration, right? Historical events, right? We know this. They often cause large societal shifts. Where did the Okies come from? Where did they primarily go? We might often be more familiar with reading stories where injustice is based on aspects of racism. How was it, if it was, how was it different for you to read a story where the injustice was primarily based more on aspects of classism, right, or social classes? How is the mistreatment of any group harmful to the overall health of United States society? And finally, I wrote, how did the stories resonate with you on an emotional level? What was your emotional response tied to, for example, a lot of times injustice will cause us to feel angry. Suffering might cause us to feel sadness, right? Of note, while I offered potential areas to reflect and consider, right? You don't need to follow any of those if you don't want to. If you found them interesting, great. If not, you're more than welcome to kind of find your own. So, yeah. Right? Focus on 2 or 3 elements that are directly tied to sociological literary criticism. And just a reminder, because it's been a couple of weeks, there is a list of them in the week 5 module, right? So if you're like, wait, what are sociological literary criticism items? Just go to the week 5 module and you'll see a list. Parenthetical quotes include at least 3 quotes from the Harvest Gypsies and include the page numbers. So for example, it would say like in parentheses, Gypsies 35. Personal connections. If there's room, personally reflect on how these texts relate to your thoughts and feelings regarding sociological issues. So yeah, do try to make some room for that. You do not need a works cited page for this one because you're only drawing from one text and it's a personal response paper. Just make sure you include the page numbers, right? So do the parenthetical citations, right? Gypsies, then the page number, parentheses, but no works cited needed. So 1 to 2 pages in length, MLA format. It's okay if you end up going a little long, but if you can, try to keep it, try to hold to that 1 to 2 pages. So I think that's, you might see some other little assignments in there, but I think that kind of covers the major stuff for this week. So Um, I'll spend a little bit of time going over the larger essay that's going to be due on October 20th because I want to kind of plant you and put you on good footing with that. So, and again, there's a write-up for this in the module as well. And then we will just kind of go into talking about the benefits of sociological literary analysis. So for the essay, right, the essay will seek to use elements of sociological literary criticism, right? And we have the key aspects of sociological criticism in the week 5 module for reference to kind of compare and explore aspects of Harvest Gypsies, They Called Us Enemy, and a little bit of the videos. So in kind of non-professory speak, right, mainly in the 2 books, how do societal forces affect Japanese Americans, and how do Japanese Americans respond? How do societal forces affect Okies, right? And how do the Okies respond? In both cases, what was similar, right? Let's compare for Japanese Americans and the Okies, right? Like each had specific events that set off higher levels of kind of classism and racism. And what is different for both groups, right? For example, well, both Japanese Americans and Okies faced extreme hardships, right? The Japanese Americans were held against their will, while the Okies didn't necessarily, they didn't have a lot of options. They were free to leave, right? So, even if leaving meant something even harder, at least they had that kind of choice that they could make for themselves, right? So that's a way in which they contrast or they're different. So the larger essay, minimum 3.5 pages, academic essay and MLA. That one will include a works cited page, but right, it's September 30th. The essay isn't due until October 20th. A good 3.5 pages, right? You got this. It's not going to be a problem, right? You will want to include as added support a minimum of 3 citations from a minimum of 3 different effective sources that do not come from the books, the videos, or other materials that have already been provided to the class. Include as added support, additionally, a minimum of 4 parenthetical, right, quoted citations that do come from Harvest Gypsies and They Called Us Enemy, right, in the provided videos. So in total, in the works cited page, there wants to be at least 6 different entries, right? 2 of those will be the books, at least 1 will be a video, and you'll have 3 credible outside sources that you find, right? And so the unofficial essay prompt, and I say unofficial because it might slightly change, but probably not, or very minorly, will be using key elements found in sociological literary criticism, compare and explore the experiences of marginalized and abused communities, specifically Japanese Americans and Okies, using They Called Us Enemy, the Harvest Gypsies, and the provided videos from previous weeks. So that's it. That's going to be the prompt. So, or very close to it. A bit more details, right? So, you might end up focusing on things like how Japanese Americans and Okies dealt with those who had power over them. You might explore their struggles and resistance and resilience. You might explore aspects of racism and classism, what historical events triggered more racism and classism. You might even look at the generational damage done to families, particularly in California, or kind of the damage done to towns and communities, right? So those are just some ideas. There's a lot that you'll be able to work with. Certainly not, those certainly aren't all the important things. So, and like always, please leave some room to reflect on your own feelings and personal thoughts, and also how these texts have shaped your understanding of marginalized, oppressed, and abused communities. Do note the potential for collective action in the pursuit of justice, right? So both texts do have areas of kind of collective action, and I think that's an important thing to know. Right? Always on a personal note, I'm interested in you, your thoughts. Please use the first person voice. For the essay, work to get below the surface kind of quickly. Right? Summary it's just not particularly valuable, especially for a critical thinking class, right? So feel free to share your thoughts, your feelings, right? I think feelings are often underappreciated in their ability to help us critically think, right? And I think they're really important for critically thinking, right? So, feel free to express your emotions in your writing, right? So, yeah, okay. So, last week we talked about key aspects of sociological literary criticism. So, let's talk about the benefits of sociological literary analysis, right? So, if we think about the benefits, what do we get out of kind of doing sociological literary criticism or analysis? Like, what do we get out of looking through that lens, right? So, one, we get a deeper understanding, right? It helps us as readers understand social forces at play in the story, right? And that leads to a deeper interpretation of the text, right? It allows us to get under the surface, and it also just in our own lives helps us recognize social forces at play that are in the real world, right? Another aspect, empathy and awareness, right? By exploring characters' experiences with social structures and inequalities, right? We often develop a greater empathy and awareness on issues that, may be different from our own lives, right? And I think that's a big one. We get to kind of develop those things. And then critical thinking, right? This type of analysis, right? It encourages us to question and critique the social norms and power dynamics that we encounter both in literature and in real life. It's hard to imagine many things being more tied to critical thinking than that. Helps give us social insight, right? We gain insight into how literature reflects and influences society, helping us understand the role of storytelling in shaping, just even like the status quo and change, right? And then, right, it also helps us engage with social issues, right? Literature looked at through sociological lens, right? It often engages with pressing issues, right? Encouraging us to think about or even take action on things that matter to us in our own lives. So, let's see. Yeah, using the lens, sociological lens, we can see how authors kind of report on social issues, how they represent marginalized groups, explore power dynamics, examine social norms and social values within their works, right? This helps us to just kind of have a better understanding of society. And it can also help reinforce or challenge particular like social hierarchies and norms, right? It helps us kind of inform and build and shape our perception and our beliefs. So exploring literature. So I think it's important. When we use sociological lens to analyze literature, I like how I decide what I wrote, whether it's important or not. And it's funny how that changes, because a lot of times I write stuff at night and then I wake up and I go, why did I think that was important? Right, we often use sociological lens to analyze literature, right? We don't just focus on the characters and their individual traits, right? We don't completely go micro with like a camera lens, right? It's kind of more macro. We look at bigger societal forces at play that are in their lives, right? We might ask questions like, why or how does issues of social class affect them? Why or how does wealth affect them? How does ethnicity or gender influence the character's experiences? Right? How do social norms and expectations shape their behavior and choices? Right? So, just think about in part how you and me and everybody we know has been shaped in part by the larger society that we grew up in. Right? So, what to look for when reading They Called Us Enemy. These are some kind of suggestions. Look for social structures, right? Institutions, and I think that's a big one. Look at how institutions like family, education, government, often you would look for religion, but I don't think that's a primary focus of this book or Harvest Gypsies, right? How do these institutions influence the characters and their actions, right? You might want to look at class structure. Examine how social class impacts the characters' lives, right? Are there clear divisions between different social classes? This in Harvest Gypsies should be pretty obvious, right? The rich have more opportunities and the poor have less. Power dynamics, right? You could look for things like authority and control. Identify who holds power in the story or articles and who is subjected to it. You should see the federal government of the United States in both, right? In Harvest Gypsies, you should also see large agriculture, right? So how is power maintained or challenged? Resistance. Look for instances of resistance against oppressive systems and characters. How do the characters resist? And what are the consequences, right? And both books have clear areas of resistance. Social inequities, right? Race and ethnicity. Look at how race and ethnicity influence the characters' experiences and interactions. Are there instances of racial discrimination or economic privilege? Yeah, there's some in both books, but there's some differences in both books as well. Economic inequality. Consider the economic conditions of the characters, right? How does wealth or poverty affect their lives and choices, right? And one way is when you're reading They Called Us Enemy, think about the communities and all the things that a lot of these people have built up and had success and what happens to that success, right? So consider, even after all these years, how some families are probably undoubtedly still recovering from the economic damage that was done at that time. So social norms and values. Look for cultural norms and values depicted in the text. How do they shape the behavior, beliefs of characters, right? So again, look for areas of racism and classism. Morality and ethics. Look for moral and ethical dilemmas faced by the characters, right? What do these dilemmas reveal about societal values, right? Could even something like a loyalty oath present a particular dilemma, right? Collective behavior and social movements, right? So group dynamics, right? Look how groups and communities are formed and function. How do the characters interact with these groups? I wrote a lot of things down. Too much. Maybe too much. I'm almost done. Penultimate page. It means next to last. Social movements, right? Look for social movements or collective actions within the story, right? That's going to be big. You're going to see collective actions within both pieces. And think about what are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish? How does it impact society? Historical and social context, so time period. Consider the historical context of the story. How do the social issues of the time period influence the characters? The author's perspective, right? One is written by George Takei, who, as a little boy, was interned in a Japanese internment camp. So you have kind of a first-person perspective on that. And Steinbeck, during the time of the Harvest Gypsies, right, traveled and wrote, right? Essentially newspaper articles, right? So George was literally in that place as a kid, right? And Steinbeck literally traveled and saw a lot of the stuff firsthand. So, yeah, so I just threw a lot at you. When I read from this kind of sociological perspective, I do not note or highlight or annotate all of the things that I just read to you, right? That would be a lot. I have certain favorites that I tend to look for. So, just hopefully what things in society interest you, what sociological issues interest you. Those should be the primary things that you look for, right? I want you to kind of gear towards writing about something you're genuinely interested in. You don't need to note everything, right? That would be, right? Even reading all of that stuff felt a little bit overwhelming. So even just having a few of those critical things, right, on your mind that can make for a really effective essay. Yeah, ask yourself, what things in society do I find interesting? Lean into the things that interest you. Even taking a little bit of time to think about the things that interest you is going to save you a lot of time, and it's going to make the writing process a lot more enjoyable. So last week we read Harvest Gypsies. This week we should get through at least 125 pages of They Called Us Enemy, and then we'll finish it up really shortly after that. If you want to read the whole thing, go for it, right? I don't actually think it'll take you too long. I just did not want to assign all 200 pages, in part because I want you to be able to enjoy some of the artwork and the illustrations in it, because I think that communicates with the story as well. So, yeah, both we see certain sociological elements that are reflected, right? The stories, the outcomes, and explorations are different, but there are certain sociological similarities. And yeah, hopefully all of this could help you with the larger essay that's coming up. And I hope you have a great week. Bye.